Morning everybody, how are y'all doing today? I'm doing great because Elden Ring Nightreign is great. Now don't get me wrong, it's far from perfect. It's missing a lot of basic online multiplayer features, which I guess shouldn't be the most surprising thing because this is FromSoft we're talking about. But the gameplay itself is extremely fun. And more importantly, at least for the sake of this video, the game has been extremely successful. It's already sold over 2 million copies in a day, and it's hit over 300,000 concurrent players on Steam. But according to one of the most infamous Nintendo fanboys ever, Harman, the game is a complete failure. But what's extra funny about this is that this video that we're gonna watch today came out before the game came out. This dude is such a D1 FromSoft hater. He was calling the game a failure before it came out. That is just insane to me. Can we even call him a D1 hater at this point? I feel like we gotta call him like a D0 hater. I know that doesn't make much sense, but I don't know. We gotta give him some like special title. You know what? Come up with one and put it in the comments. The best one gets pinned. But yeah, anyway, like I said, we're gonna be talking about his video that he uploaded 2 days ago, in which he already tried to say that Elden Ring Nightreign was a failure because, you know, this guy just hates everything Elden Ring and everything FromSoft related in general. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this and find out why Elden Ring Nightreign is already a complete failure.
Well.
Okay, sorry to pause this early, but why is he acting like the villain in a kid's movie when they've captured the hero and they're like in handcuffs or something? And they're explaining their whole evil plan to the hero. Just had to throw that out there.
Elden Ring sequel has come out. It's on Metacritic. We can see the reception. We can see the audience, how they responded to this game. We can see how the critics responded to this game. You know, the game will be out tomorrow, I believe. But it couldn't be more obvious to everyone that no one cares. You know, Elden Ring Nightreign has came and went like the wind, you know.
I think this dude just set the world record for highest number of contradictions in the shortest amount of time. You can't say the game is out and then say it comes out tomorrow and then say it came and went. Like, dude, which one is it? I mean, obviously I know which one it is. This video came out before the game came out, so how could the game have come and gone if it didn't even come out yet? In order to come and go, you have to come first. Don't take that out of context. But like I said before, this game hit 300,000 players on launch night. I don't think it's a fair statement to say that nobody cares about it. I'd say quite a few people, including myself, cared about it. You can't say nobody cares about it just because you don't, although I guess you do. What am I even saying? Clearly you do care about it because you're making this video on it, and you just made another one today. Also, notice how he gloats about how the critics respond. Just keep that in mind. I want to bring something up about that in a little bit. Also, I almost forgot to mention, dude, you do know that this game isn't a sequel to Elden Ring, right? It's a spin-off. Really shows how much, or rather how little, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Forget Doom the Dark Ages and Clair Obscur Expedition 33 being forgotten about after a couple of weeks. You know, Elden Ring Nightreign wasn't even really a thing. You know, that's kind of crazy if you think about it. After all the hype, all the publicity, all the worship, you know, Elden Ring is now a stagnant IP.
What do you mean by it's a stagnant IP? Do you mean it's not coming out with new releases? Because they literally just did, or at least at the time that you made this video, they were literally just about to release a new game. How is that a stagnant IP in any way? And yes, no duh, Elden Ring Nightreign wasn't really a thing because it hadn't come out yet when you made the video. Now that it has come out, it is in fact a thing. Like, imagine if I said this about the new Donkey Kong game. Oh, damn it, it's not even really a thing, it just came and went. That would be completely stupid. Also, saying that Expedition 33 and Doom have been forgotten already is completely laughable, especially Expedition. Something tells me he's just upset because Expedition 33 has remained relevant longer already, at least in the mainstream media, than Tears of the Kingdom has.
You know, the first game they put out in this series, the first follow-up ever, and it completely bungles everything and demonstrates something very clearly that I've been saying for a long time, is that FromSoft fans are not interested in playing anything other than the traditional FromSoft formula. You know, they're not going to play Armored Core, they're not going to play Nightreign, and they're certainly not going to play like a new Nintendo IP from FromSoft, right? They don't care about any of that. All they care about...
I mean, Elden Ring is one of my favorite games of all time, so is Dark Souls 3. I love all of the Souls games. Still played and thoroughly enjoyed Armored Core, loving Nightreign right now despite its glaring flaws. And I play a wide variety of games on top of that, so I don't really know what you're talking about, man. Also, a guy who only plays on the Switch calling other people out for not playing a wide variety of games is kinda hilarious. Also, what in God's name does it mean to bungle something? Hold on, I'm gonna look this up. Bungle. Carry out a task clumsily or incompletely. Sorry, incompetently, my bad. You know what? I'll give him half a point for this one. Because like I said, for as fun as Elden Ring Nightreign is, there are a lot of glaring flaws that desperately need to be fixed. The main ones I can think of off the top of my head, there's no duos mode, solos needs to be balanced a little better, but they are working on that, they said. No voice chat, no text chat, the pinging system needs to be improved. Basically, a lot of the multiplayer aspects of this game kind of got fumbled. So, you know what, Harman? I'll give you a little bit of credit here. You're kind of correct on that, but only kind of. But how does them fumbling like multiplayer features and whatever mean that the fans don't have an interest in the game? I'm trying not to repeat myself too much, but again, 2 million sales in one day, 300,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. People are definitely interested in the game regardless of how lacking it may be in certain features.
Is running through some stale derivative, dreary open worlds, and just fighting some, like, repetitive bosses, you know? That's the FromSoft experience, right? They just want to LARP as if they're, like, some hardcore gamers because they play these games. Anything different than this completely goes against, like, their interests and their image of themselves as, like, these hardcore gamers. FromSoft fans have been exposed for not really being able to even a little bit go outside of their comfort zone, right? This has been a reoccurring thing. You know, I've talked a lot about how much of a failure Dusk Bloods is going to be.
Okay, is it just me, or is this some insane projection? Like, oh, FromSoft fans are afraid to go outside of their comfort zone. Coming from a guy who literally will not leave his comfort zone of the Nintendo Switch, simply because he's such a Nintendo elitist and hates other consoles and PC that much. Also, who out there is actually cringe enough to call themselves a hardcore gamer just because they play a Souls game? And they're so devoted to playing Souls games that they won't play anything else. Anybody out there who plays Souls games, do you think of yourself as a hardcore gamer who's just better than everyone else? If so, stop it. You're not better than everyone else. Also, I'll say this about Dusk Bloods. If it does end up being a failure, the most likely reason will honestly be because it's going to be Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. Now, I'm sure there will be other contributing factors if it does fail. Like, who knows, maybe people just won't like the Souls style, but with, like, your standard multiplayer. But by going Nintendo exclusive, you're already cutting out a lot of people, including myself. I love the Souls games. I'm not buying a Switch 2 for Dusk Bloods, but I'm also not gonna hate Dusk Bloods automatically just because it's a Switch 2 exclusive. It could end up being a great game. Still won't buy it unless it comes to PC, though.
I've talked extensively about how, like, the Elden Ring DLC failed, and I think it's safe to say that the Elden Ring IP, the original release of Elden Ring, has failed, you know, because there was no room for growth of this sub-series of the FromSoft formula to ever really take off and become successful. You know, people keep talking about a movie, it's not going to do as well as Zelda. People keep talking about, like, the original release, which hasn't done as well as Zelda. People keep talking about, like, this idea that, like, this was Game of the Year, which does not matter in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, Harman, I have to ask, is your metric for a game succeeding based on whether it does better than Zelda or not? Because by that logic, almost every game is a failure. You know, I say that like it's obviously stupid, but he would probably agree with me on that. And okay, yeah, sure, the Elden Ring movie probably won't do as well as the Zelda movie. Why does that matter? Why do you care? Why are you so pressed about everything FromSoft does being worse than Nintendo. And yeah, I remember those videos you made on the Elden Ring DLC being a failure. They were wrong, because it very much was not a failure. But, you know, go off. We all love propagating a little bit of misinformation on the internet every once in a while. Harman just happens to have a whole channel based around it. Also, I love that he says Elden Ring being Game of the Year doesn't matter. When you know 1000% if Tears of the Kingdom had won Game of the Year over Baldur's Gate 3, he would be touting that until the end of time. It only doesn't matter when it doesn't support his narrative. Even though this dude has uploaded dozens of videos in the past talking about the Game Awards and why he clearly cares about them, including this one right here, where apparently Xenoblade 3 should have beat Elden Ring, but I thought it didn't matter, so what's the deal, man?
You know, like, the narrative was Elden Ring was this huge cultural phenomenon, you know, one of the biggest games of the decade, and the reality is that simply isn't true. You know, when Nintendo put out The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, it was immediately obvious to everyone that this was a major success story and another example of just why Nintendo is so far ahead of the rest of the industry with the Legend of Zelda franchise.
I mean, sure, Tears of the Kingdom was a huge success story, but I'd argue it wasn't as impressive as Elden Ring's success, because Tears of the Kingdom was the sequel to a massively successful game. Now, yes, the Dark Souls trilogy was very successful, but it was also very niche, so the fact that Elden Ring managed to sell as many copies as it did, I think it was like around 30 million or something like that, which, by the way, is more than the entire Dark Souls trilogy combined, is a much more impressive feat. But keep in mind, I'm only saying this for the sake of the video. Like, in reality, it doesn't matter which game sold more, or which game has, like, the more impressive success story or whatever. Why can't they just both be great games that people love? Is that so wrong? Apparently. Also, can we talk about the fact that this is supposed to be about how Nightreign has been forgotten already and it's a complete failure, and somehow he's managed to tie Zelda and Nintendo into this? This dude's ability to tie Nintendo into any topic, no matter how irrelevant, will never cease to amaze me.
Right. You know, Tears of the Kingdom was a huge success. You know, Super Mario Bros. Wonder was a huge success that built off of, like, decades of games to deliver this, like, amazing new experience. Like, what did Elden Ring Nightreign accomplish? You know, this is the direction FromSoft wants to go in now. They want to move away from the FromSoft formula and start becoming Fortnite, you know, to try and bring in, like, the mass audiences, because their games are underperforming and aren't doing very well, and that they're desperate to try and expand past their core audience of internet, terminally online internet weirdos, right?
And how do you know that they want to move away from the traditional formula, dude? This is just an experimental spin-off game. Just because they release this game doesn't mean they're going to give up on what made them great in the first place. They're not that stupid. And you want to know why? Because Elden Ring was able to appeal to a way wider audience than Dark Souls could, as evidenced again by the sales. And guess what? Just because a company tries something new like Nightreign doesn't mean they're desperate. Does that mean Nintendo was desperate when they made Breath of the Wild because they went open world and completely shook up the formula? Like, no! You can try something new without being desperate. Also, again, the projection calling FromSoft fans terminally online weirdos when this guy uploads more than most YouTubers, and it's literally just a hobby for him. Well, actually, scratch that. This might not be a hobby to him. This might be him fighting a war on behalf of Nintendo for him. Take a shot every time I just said him right there. Not of alcohol, though. Of water. Or apple juice. Something safe.
Nightreign was supposed to be their next big thing. You know, Dusk Bloods was supposed to be their next big thing. You know, Armored Core 6 was supposed to be a big thing. And yet, we're seeing more and more often that their audience are rejecting all of their efforts to move away from the traditional FromSoft formula. People are not happy about Nightreign at all. Now, it's gotten a 78 on Metacritic. It's not, like, poorly received or anything, but this is probably just to preserve, like, FromSoft's reputation as, like, the greatest in the industry. I imagine most of their fans just think they're going to go back and, like, produce, like, a real sequel to Elden Ring at some point in the future, but
I mean, maybe they will. Who knows? I think Miyazaki said there's no plans for an Elden Ring 2 right now, but we shall see. And you want to know why people aren't happy with the game right now? It's not because it deviates from the formula. From what I've seen, people really like the game for the most part. Again, it's just that lack of multiplayer quality of life stuff. On top of the fact that apparently the game is crashing for a lot of people, which personally I haven't experienced yet, but I can imagine that would be super frustrating. The people who don't like this game, for the most part, aren't hating on it because of the core gameplay or the fact that it's different. It's because it has issues that have to be ironed out. Also, I love how even when a FromSoft game gets a lower score than usual, especially one in the 70s, he still calls it a shilling campaign. Like, doesn't this prove that there isn't a shilling campaign behind FromSoft, and that for the most part they do in fact make good games? They've just slipped up on some aspects with Nightreign. Nope, them getting a 79 means there's somehow still a shilling campaign behind this game. Now, if this game got in the 90s, sure, then maybe we can talk about that, but it didn't, and honestly, I would say a 78 is a pretty fair score for the game, all things considered. Maybe I would put it a bit higher, but I don't know, I would have to give it a little more thought. Now, an example of a game not doing well or being reviewed poorly because it moved away from the traditional formula is Battlefield 2042. They changed way too much about it to the point where it didn't even feel like a Battlefield game. Now, if they release Elden Ring 2 and it plays like Nightreign, then people might have an issue with that. But as of right now, that's not the issue, and you know it. Or maybe you don't, and I'm giving you too much credit. I really don't know, man.
The reality is, the fact that Dusk Bloods exists, you know, that it's basically just more Nightreign, that should, like, give you a really strong indication of, like, where the company actually is and what their priorities are. You know, they're not interested in producing another FromSoft game.
Just because they're working on Dusk Bloods, that automatically means they're moving away from everything else? Are you listening to yourself? They are literally releasing another version of Elden Ring called the Tarnished Edition for when the Switch 2 comes out. Plus, we have no idea what they're working on behind the scenes. They could be working on Elden Ring 2 right now. They could be working on some other, like, Souls-style game that plays like Elden Ring and Dark Souls, but it's another different universe or something like that. We have no idea. Also, again, he's showing how little he knows about even a game that's coming to his own platform. Like, dude, if you're gonna hate stuff this much, at least know what you're talking about with it. The Dusk Bloods is not going to be like Nightreign. Nightreign is like Monster Hunter and Risk of Rain style. Dusk Bloods is gonna be PvPvE, and we don't know anything besides that, but just the fact that the PvP is in there means it's already gonna be different. In fact, if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. If you're gonna hate something, please have the decency to at least know what you're talking about and do research on the thing you're hating.
You know, Nightreign, I think, is the first major example of how something like Elden Ring, you know, this fake success will not be able to survive, will not be able to protect this company from the inevitable. Right. You know, something like Elden Ring, which is a minor success that was never able to compete with the real success stories in the industry, was not able to prop up this company to do what it needed to do, which was to destroy Nintendo with the rest of the industry.
Everything is an attack against Nintendo to this guy. It's absurd. Guys, did you know that Elden Ring actually exists to be propped up to destroy Nintendo? Because I sure didn't. You want to know why I didn't know that? Because that's not true! Also, good lord, dude, have you heard of an editing software? Go back in your video and cut out the dead air where your last brain cell gets fried and you can't form a coherent thought. And how is Elden Ring a minor success? How is like 30 million plus copies sold a minor success? And how is it fake? Like, where is your source that is fake? Like, do you think companies just lie about sales and stuff? They're literally not allowed to. Now, sure, there's ways they can kind of avoid it. Like, for example, with Bethesda, they said Doom the Dark Ages hit 3 million players. That doesn't mean 3 million copies sold, though, because that includes Game Pass. But Elden Ring isn't on any subscription service, so you gotta buy it to to play it. There's no getting around that. Stuff like this is why I don't do Harman content as much anymore. It is legitimately draining to talk about this guy. And the worst part is he just uploaded another video on Elden Ring Nightreign, so I gotta talk about him again. I'm currently in Spain, but the S is silent.
Like, Elden Ring from Slop, like, it is absolutely one of the only major studios remaining that has any following large enough, insane enough, and delusional enough to pretend as if what they produce is better than Nintendo games, right? Gaming journals are trying to build up other studios like Warhorse, like Larian, like the Claire Obscure 33 guys, the like, there are just dozens of examples of...
Oh my god, dude, I actually can't. I'm sorry I cut the clip short, but, like, that's all you need to see. There's dozens of game studios that games journalists are trying to prop up, according to Harman, yet he could only name, like, 2, and even then, those ones weren't even valid. You do know that just because a company gets praise that isn't Nintendo doesn't automatically mean they're being propped up for the sake of taking down Nintendo, right? Also, as a FromSoft fan, I can confirm that I don't think FromSoft produces better games than Nintendo. I know they do. And that's not delusion, that's just an opinion. And if you think my opinion is delusional, you clearly have not looked in the mirror today. But let me guess, because I like them, I'm now a shill.
But the reality is, the only one that got any traction whatsoever is FromSlop. And it really is only because of the Souls formula. You know, without that, they really have no real bearing or influence on the industry at large. They simply aren't capable of expanding past that tired, stale, derivative concept. And Elden Ring Nightreign is a very, very good example of that.
How is Nightreign proof that they can't expand past the basic Souls formula? It is literally an entirely new game for them. It's a Monster Hunter Risk of Rain Souls hybrid. They've never done that before. Didn't you just say earlier in the video that they were leaving behind the original Souls formula to chase the Fortnite crowd? But now apparently they're incapable of doing so. Like, dude, what are you saying? And dude, saying that they have no influence outside of the Souls games, that's like saying Nintendo doesn't have influence on the industry outside of Mario, or Sega doesn't have influence outside of Sonic. Like, wow, you mean to tell me without a company's most popular IP, they would be way less influential and popular? Wow, what a concept. All right, I'm not gonna lie, guys, I'm getting really hungry, but I will play one more clip before I go. Just brace yourselves for this. Buckle up those brain cells if you have any left.
But the reality is, the last thing these people want is for FromSlop to make the jump over to Nintendo hardware. You know, making the same games but available on Nintendo consoles. Because once that happens, it'll become very apparent to everyone just how lackluster FromSlop actually is compared to even the below average Nintendo games.
Dude, as my theology teacher in high school used to say, I don't give a walking, swimming, or flying crap if FromSoft games go to the Switch. Dark Souls Remastered is already on the Switch, isn't it? And I don't care that Elden Ring is going to the Switch. Like, great, cool, more people get to play it. I just don't want them to release games exclusively on the Switch, because exclusivity is dumb. And also, how do FromSoft games going to the Switch prove to everybody that Switch games are better? You can already judge that. Like, you do know there are people who play Nintendo games and FromSoft games, right? Because they might have a Switch, but also have, like, a PS5 or an Xbox or a PC. So they can still play FromSoft games and have an opinion on which games are better. Like, Elden Ring going to the Switch is not going to change anything. But also, on top of that, who is out here comparing Nintendo games to FromSoft games? They're not even similar. Whether Elden Ring comes to the Switch too or not, it's a dumb comparison. Oh my god, alright, we're done. We're done. That's the end of the video. We made it. Thank God. I'm tired, I'm hungry, and as of recording this, I have a stream in like an hour and a half. Like I said before, if you take one thing away from this video, let it be that you shouldn't hate something unless you actually know what you're talking about. I honestly feel like if people followed that logic, the world would be in a much better place right now. So please, do research before you hate. Or, you know, just don't hate at all. But yeah, anyway, with all that being said, guys, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, subscribe if you want to see more, especially if you want more Nightreign content. I'm gonna be making a bunch over the next few days. Join us every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for Salt streams, and join us every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, including tonight, but this might go up after the stream, so this might not make sense, but whatever. Every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the gaming channel for gaming streams, and I will catch you all next time.